Republicans have been out pushing this notion that there's this massive voter fraud, therefore we need to have photo ID restrictions at the polling place, when what they know is that photo ID restrictions at the polling place will most definitely disenfranchise potentially millions of voters. They've figured it out. They've spent a lot of money. They've worked sort of under the radar. Bradblog.com, we exposed a whole bunch of what was going on, and the guy who was running this thing, Thor Hearn, who was the former National General Counsel for Bush-Cheney 04 Inc., he ran this thing right out of the box after the 04 election. He suddenly became a nonpartisan voting rights advocate for a group called American Center for Voting Rights. It's a phony outfit. They received $1 million. We still don't to set up and run. We still have no idea where that money came from. But you can rest assured it came from guys like James Baker and Karl Rove, who set up this operation, who have been running it ever since, and who, with some a good amount of recent success, including a Supreme Court decision that happened just this week in Indiana that says, yeah, we have a problem with voter fraud. It's okay to ask for these photo IDs. It's a scam. They know it's a scam, and they're relying on a media who is just so lazy or so disinterested that they'll just go ahead and report it as if it's actually the case, despite all of the facts, all of the numbers that show otherwise. This is a scam. It's not about voter fraud for these people. It's about voter suppression, period. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't always do it successfully, but he knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows it long before anyone else does. He was, in fact, the guy responsible, and you can get this on tape, for running the photo ID scam that he had Thor Hearn run on his behalf at the American Center for Voting Rights in April of 2006. I think it's 2006. Karl Rove actually thanks Thor Hearn by name at the Republican National Lawyers Association dinner, in which he names states that they're concerned about. They all turned out to be the states that they then purged the U.S. attorneys from, and at that dinner, Thor Hearn is the only one who was thanked by name. They know what they're doing. He knows what he's doing. The Democrats are clueless, hapless. They don't have a chance to keep up, and the mainstream media doesn't even try.
People say, well, what's wrong with ID? I mean, Jimmy Carter said, what's wrong with an ID? After all, his chauffeur can vouch for him. He's got passports and Nobel Prizes. Vernon Jordan has his ID from the golf club. So they have no problem. Okay. But I'd like anyone watching this film to ask themselves, do you know if your voter registration matches exactly your driver's license? Does one have a middle initial? Does one have junior and not, and the other not? Do you know? Do you remember? And by the way, the signature is exactly the same. Did you write out your name in one and use an initial in another? Can you tell me that right now? And who's going to be asked to make that identity? And when they don't match, who's going to be told you can't vote? We know the answer already. We know the answer already. And so you talk about terrorists now. Believe it or not, guys in Al-Qaeda are not hankering to vote in our elections. So we don't need IDs to prevent them from voting in our elections. Illegal immigrants are not rushing into polling places to get themselves nabbed by voting with false IDs. In fact, no one. In fact, as one Hispanic organizer told me, it's really difficult to get people to vote once, let alone get them to vote twice with a false ID. It doesn't happen. I challenged the woman in New Mexico, the state legislator, who was pushing the law for voter ID that Bill Richardson, that pinhead, signed. What Richardson signed was a bill promoted by this legislator named Fox Young, that's really her name, who said, I have proof here that there are 2 voters in the entire state, 2 voters who voted using false ID, just like Joe McCarthy, proof of, I have the names of the communists. I have here in my hand proof that 2 people voted under a false name. That's why we need to ask for their ID. I said, wow, that's interesting. Send me the proof, would you? I called her up. Never got the proof. She said, oh, well, check with the Justice Department. She gave me a name. I called the Justice Department. I said, can you tell me about these 2 people? And I said, well, we're investigating many matters. I said, do you have 2 people you're investigating for this crime? He said, well, no. There's another, she made it up. She lied. People didn't lie to vote, but she lied to pass the bill. They couldn't even find 2 people in the entire state who voted under a false name. And yet we're changing the laws, which will knock out thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. That's how the election of 2008 will be stolen. I'm telling you right now.
We had an atrocious decision by the Supreme Court. I liken it to the Dred Scott decision of 1857. Basically, what they said was that it was okay in Indiana to ask for state-issued photo ID from voters. That, despite the fact that there has never been, and the state admitted this, never in the history of Indiana a case of a polling place voter impersonation. You've got problems with absentee balloting and so forth. This law doesn't speak to it. It speaks only to in-person voter impersonation fraud. It doesn't happen. They have no record of this ever occurring in the state's history, and yet somehow the Supreme Court let this go, knowing that it's going to disenfranchise thousands of voters, elderly who don't have driver's license, people, minorities, urban dwellers, youth voters from out of state. This brazen voter suppression is coming to a state near you unless people wake up and realize what the hell is going on here. If in fact we see these sorts of laws, and we will see them, they are proposed in states around the country, we're easily talking about disenfranchising enough voters that it could flip the 2008 election. Missouri is already moving forward with this law. They're trying to change their constitution in order to allow this law because it had previously been found unconstitutional. Missouri is such a swing state as far as the red-blue divide goes in this country, that you shave off a few thousand votes in St. Louis City alone with these kind of photo ID restrictions, you can easily flip that state to go Republican. Flip a state like Missouri to go Republican, and you can flip the entire 2008 election.